I am a ZANU-PF youth. Actually, I'm very much
I'll send you the pictures.
I'll send you the
pictures.
I'm
I'll send you the pictures if you want evidence.
And the ZANU-PF that I've grown to
I was given a chance to talk. You cannot call it a monologue. I was given an opportunity to talk.
taught me that no,
So you cannot say it's a monologue. I was given an opportunity to talk.
All right.
Let's make this thing clear. It's a monologue. This gentleman, and he confirms it right now by interjecting and disturbing me when I'm presenting. I allowed him to say whatever he was saying, even if I knew that is a monologue. And it's very clear that this man is mistaking his monologue for a debate or for an engagement with others. He's used to just rambling on and on. That's the problem. And the challenge that we seem to have, which is very clear here, is that his arguments, most of them actually lack any intellectual engagement. You can easily...
Today, we are tackling a very, very important subject. I know as a people, we've been talking in silos. We are going to look at the relationships of the Ndebele people and the Shona people. Whatever criteria that the people want to assume or to take, that's fine. But I was thinking that maybe if we can start from pre-independence to post-independence, then looking at the Kukura Hundu impact on the relationship as well. If time allows, we will try to go as far as trying to suggest solutions. But solutions maybe will be another day, I suspect, because really I would like us really to go deep into the issues. I know that this is a sensitive subject. Emotions might boil. However, my request, my plea is that we tackle the issues, not individuals. Because the way we pitched this topic, it is at a high level of knowledge creation. We are aware that there are different perspectives. So we should be respectful of those different perspectives. I wish I could introduce all of you, but I don't think it will be the best use of time. In order for us to be as quick as possible, I will ask you to introduce yourselves. Let me start with you, Mr. Chikovhi. If you could briefly introduce yourself, please.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invite. Chikovhi Manyovi, or Boniface Chikovhi Manyovi from Harare. I'm in Harare. I'm from Bikita. Kunonzi around Nyaunda and Kwanyika.
Okay.
And I'm a writer and idealist. Thank you very much.
I thought of, let me come to Ubabu Maponga. I know you don't really need much of introduction, but I'll be happy if you can introduce yourself.
Maponga J, Farmers of Thought.
Dr. Sigabade, if you could briefly introduce yourself, Bob. Okay. All right. The reason why inviting you or inviting us to come and have a conversation over this topic is because of the interview or the discussion or conversation that of Mr. Maponga that I saw on DJ Spoo's The Hustler's Corner. So let me just briefly play a clip.
This includes even the Ndebele issue that is still outstanding. The murders that happened there, which no one wants to talk about. But people in power, what do you lose? Just to drop the flags for 3 months? Commemorate all those that died? Build monuments? Call for celebrations? Put it aside. Set up a trust for those that were victimized and children for school fees to be paid. Activate economic development in the places that were heavily affected. Name schools after the heroes that died, and etc. Put an end to it. And silence 45 years later? 45 years later, we have this simmering pot of anger that has not been resolved. So I think that justice is being overplayed in the hands of mercy. And I think Mugabe left a big hole in the room where he sat on this thing and oppressed it and pressed it down that no one could talk about it. So even up to now, people are scared of starting to even mention and talking about Gukurahundi. And while we're talking about Gukurahundi, we are not forgetting that Mziligazi himself has also his swords that are dripping with blood in South Africa. From Koblawai, right in Melmoth, through Mpumalanga. You can ask King Nyabela himself. Right in Randburg here, Mhlakeni. Murder trails into Kimberley, the Khoisan, into Botswana. The Botswana people, when he entered Zimbabwe, the Nambias, the Karangas, the Vendors, and the Karangas all faced the sharp spear of Mzilikas. And you are seeing all these praises, and you forget, what about the children of the people that died at the hands of your swords? Now you want to start another country in Zimbabwe. You call it Mtwagas, those that we killed. And we think that the children, I heard this story from my own grandfather. I'm not hearing stories. That when Mziligazi and his soldiers, Bolo Bengula, came in, they plundered cattle, they took women, they took children, killed the men.
All right. I just wanted to start us with a clip because many people, after listening to what you have said on DJ Spoo's platform, they feel that you are peddling some half-truths or ZANU-PF propaganda. They feel that your narrative has got some tribal connotations. What do you say about that, Baba Maponga? How do you respond to what people are saying? And after that, I would like you to give us your views in terms of the relationships of the Ndebeles and the Shonas, starting pre-independence to post-independence. Over to you, Baba.
Before I go very far, it will be difficult for me to address you from that background of what people are saying. If people have their ideas of what must be said, then I think I must be talking to those people. They don't need to be away from here. Then whoever has an issue, then they can come forward. But because you have raised it, I'll speak from that perspective. That people went to school to learn how to read and write, but somewhere, somehow, the history of the Ndebele, and I don't want to call them Ndebele, in all honesty, because I have been to Ndebele. I know the Ndebele people there. I've been to KwaZulu. I know the Zulu people there. I've been to Botswana. I know Botswana people there. I know the Nambias. I know the Kalangas. And when you come to Ndebele, what you call Ndebele right now in Koblawai is not the Ndebele that is spoken in Mpumalanga in South Africa. So, and again, with the knowledge that I gathered in KwaZulu-Natal, having worked and lived with King Zwelithini himself, and I opened up a church at the Royal Palace, Kokangela. I worked in Swaziland with the King of Swaziland and managed to do crusades there, baptized the queens and princesses there, the mother of whom becomes the mother of the present sitting king. And the relationship that I've nurtured for more than 25 years, so that even in the midst of our lunches and dinners and suppers, I had a first-hand interview and conversation with King Zwelithini himself, who then gave me a bit of the history of the Kumalo family, the Siligas family, pointed me to Melmoth, Kwablawayo, where the Kumalo family used to stay, and how Siligas himself was then co-opted during the raids of Shaka, coming in from Senzangakona's household to claim his royal throne, and how he suppressed all the other tribes or kings or chiefs, whatever language you want to use, to establish now what you call the Zulu Empire or Zulu Kingdom. And now when you begin to talk, I think about 10 years ago, I bumped up on the Bungane, King Bungane. I did some programs with him on Sankofa, who then gave me also another story of how they prepared Shaka, how his grandfather actually prepared Shaka to the royal throne. And later on, I met up with King Mtetwa, who is now in parliament, who is also now claiming that he's not Zulu, he is Mtetwa. He became Zulu because of the raids of Shaka, but the post-independence, they don't feel that they owe their allegiance to the Zulu monarch, as they want to establish their own house, give them Mtetwa house. Registrations have gone underway. I also met up with King Litsitsa in Harrismith. Then also says he does not belong to the Zulu monarch. He is establishing his own home, own kingdom, as it were, around Bloemfontein and Harrismith, into the lower parts of Estcourt and Lothburg, to claim what Shaka could have taken away. So the background that I have there will then tell me that when Mziligas left, according to Zwelithini. So let people not say I'm being biased or ZANU-PF connotation. There's no ZANU-PF in KwaZulu-Natal. And people must not be emotional about history. History is merciless. History is cruel. And in its cruelty, people must be honest. We cannot put cotton gloves around the reality of what history looked like. Again, the danger, even in the midst of that history, it is that it is being written by those that don't like us. So the only option we have is oral tradition, which then becomes our central source, which then tells us the epics of the ancient years. And we can only hear some of this in the totems and the lyrics that are spoken when we are praising our kings, when we are praising our totems. And then you begin to hear the battles that were fought, the conquests that were won, the journeys that were traveled, the people that were conquered, and all that history has now been preserved in what I want to call oral tradition. And again, while I'm there, I managed to have lived, and I know King Nyabela personally from Mpumalanga, who also gave me the history of what happened when Mziligas lived with them in Kwanyabela, in Mpumalanga, and moved over to Mtlakeng, gave me the history of Mtlakeng. I met up with the king of Mtlakeng also, told me the history from here. They moved up to Kimberley, and I did not have a chance of meeting the Khoisan, but I met the king of the Khoi and the San, who was living at Pretoria State House for some time, claiming the land of South Africa as their land. They also gave me some drips and pieces of the history. Botswana is a place well known to me. Francistown, Gaborone, and the movement of Mzilikas from Kimberley through Botswana, Kumalo, heading on, Mzilikas lagging behind to kind of give Shaka a deter, so that should he follow him, he should not find him immediately, and him and the in-house, Awang remained behind. Kumalo then becomes the regiment who walks in, and another dark side of Mzilikazi, how Kumalo was then pushed out when Mzilika came and found that he had been stated himself as king, and the whole drama of the death of the general there, it can be spoken for another day. And I wish the Ndebele people themselves would come up and give us the story of how they end up in Zimbabwe themselves. So, and my grandmother is Benda, my mother is Ndebele, my grandfather is Manzini, Uchamela, Umafa, Usbanda, Mshatungahlole, Tambo, Nzibande. And the origin is also from Swaziland. So I believe that my grandfather could have been one of the regiments who came in with the Mzilikas. But what I was told by Nyavela is that when they came into Kwandebele in Mpumalanga, it was convenient for them to change from being known blatantly as Zulu, because Shaka would follow them. So they transformed or translated and mutated, as it were, to adopt the Kwandebele and Ndebele thing, so that language and etc., so that at least they could be a deterrent. But when you come up to the language, the linguistic itself, the language is Zulu of the present Ndebele, with a little bit of Kwandebele language in it, but the dressing then sells it off totally. Because the next place you find the dressing of the Ndebele people in Zimbabwe is not according to the Ndebele people in Mpumalanga, but it is in Ndebele people in KwaZulu-Natal, as they are also found in Malawi and in Zambia, who are genuinely Nguni origins. So we having that background, then the arrival in Zimbabwe, both the Moffats who come later, the Zulika's regiment arrive first, and then Cecil John Rhodes and Moffat follow him with the whole grant concessions and etc. Lobengula claiming himself to be the king of Zimbabwe, then signs the Rhodes concession to hand over Zimbabwe, as it were, to the regime of the day. Sensitive as it is, it must be spoken that the raids of the 1800s, 1860s, 1864s, the 1865s, 1866, the stories are all over the country here. I don't even need to protect, but maybe to avoid being confrontational and out-seek maybe someone, a historian from the Ndebele community. It's sad. When I got here, I really wanted to meet Uba Bunyati, but he has passed on. He passed on before I could make my way down there to meet him. But all I'm interested in is one thing to be a political commentator, it's another thing to be a historical observer who is simply interested in the true narrative, so that we can inform people from a point of, we know this is what happened, rather than don't talk about it. Let's just talk about Bukra Hundi. Let's talk about this. Don't say this. And the Zimbabwe was not a country. We got here and we found no one. How can you say you found no one in Zimbabwe when places had names? Rituals were being conducted in Matopos. The Kameruis were not built by the Ndebele people, to say out the least. The Domboshawa in Botswana were not built by the Ndebele people. The monuments of the Great Zimbabwe and 286 other sites have their glory in the Great Zimbabwe, which was actually the empire that conquered the south here from lower Tanzania into Mapungubwe in South Africa. And to be so blatant and say that when the Ndebeles came here, there were no people, but the Nambias were there, the vendors were there, and the Kalandas were there. The Karandas were here, and I don't know what is it with our Ndebele community. Ukuthi nicasulwa yini makuthi imbali ifanele ikhulunywe, and ikhulunywe so beautifully. Even the Hutu and the Tutsis can talk about their history, that we killed each other, but what we do about it. But the Zimbabwean story, mysteriously, it leaves a very sad and sour taste in my mouth, because it cannot be spoken to openly. The narrative cannot be challenged. And those who claim to have the correct history, they only want to talk about the 1992, 93 stories and 94s. They don't want to go backwards. And again, I experienced the war in Zimbabwe in its fullness, including the Gukura Hundi. I was at Solusi. We saw people from Cholocho, Balule, Mananda coming through Solusi and etc. We experienced that live. And etc. We lived in fear. And worse, because I'm a half-breed. I'm a mixture of Shona-Ndebele. When the families would have passed through Solusi, our own brothers and sisters at high school.
All right,
They beat us up. They beat us up to pulp, saying that your cousins and your brothers are killing our mothers. So we also suffered in our own way. So, to say the least, this history is here, and we must speak about it. I thank you.
Okay, no, thanks very much for that. I will give you another opportunity. However, for now, let me move to Dr. Sigabade. Dr. Sigabade, if you can share what you have in terms of the Ndebele-Shona relationships. I will come to you, Baba Maponga. I will ask a few questions to clarify a few things. But over to you, Dr. Sigabade.
But I think the starting point here may have been a wrong one, actually, because it presupposes a lot of things. I was listening to Maponga going on and on with his monologue. And I wondered whether really he met some of the people that he claimed to have met, because those people cannot be telling him the history that he claims to be presenting. Part of it, which is our history, this is the history that touches some of us. For example, to claim that he met Inkosi Yamakosi.
I'll send you the pictures. I'll send you the pictures if you want evidence.
Okay,
but allow me to continue.
Maponga.
I was given a chance to talk. You cannot call it a monologue. I was given an opportunity to talk. So you cannot say it's a monologue. I was given an opportunity to talk.
All right. Let me
Gala, let's make this thing clear. It's a monologue. This gentleman, and he confirms it right now by interjecting and disturbing me when I'm presenting. I allowed him to say whatever I was saying, even if I knew that is a monologue. And it's very clear that this man is used to mistaking his monologue for a debate or for an engagement with others. He's used to just rambling on and on. That's the problem. And the challenge that we seem to have, which is very clear here, is that his arguments, most of them actually lack any intellectual engagement. You can easily see it. I know Maponga, in case he doesn't know, I know him. I know him from Esolusi. I know him from when he was learning, when he was practicing Ugufundisi, Esolusi, up to when he goes to Erusangu, which he knows. Actually, he knows where I know him from, Erusangu. And some of the things that he's talking about, which he doesn't explain, even how in Swaziland, what are problems, I know everything. But that is besides the point. The issue is here is that he seems to be so focused on trying to present a narrative that is actually, I mean, he just talked too many things. He talked about Mapungubwe, and then he talked about Amandebele, Awandebele, Uti, and then Amandebele, Zimbabwe, our fund, Awandebele. In fact, he forgot that Amandebele Zimbabwe, the so-called Ndebele Zimbabwe, by right, we are actually not in Ndebele. The language we speak very by right is actually not even Ndebele. We are part of the Nguni, and in some instances, it brings some elements of truth. We can see somehow. For example, when he talks about the Mtetwa, and then he confesses everything, and then he confuses himself, because the Mtetwa kingdom, we know how the Mtetwa Confederacy spread to include one of the generals, Umtakasi Nzanga, who happens to be Inkos Uchang, Ilembele Kamanyamale. We know how he became the king of the Zulus. We know who actually dressed him. We know who actually prepared him. We know all this. This is our history. We also know what happened to after so what happens when Udingiswayo ultimately we understand this history. I don't think I can sit here and be lectured on that on my history by Maponga. I know my history. I'm a researcher. I spend all my time researching on my history. The problem we have with the Zimbabweans is that they have this heightened sense of entitlement they have this heightened sense of entitlement. This sense of entitlement is the one that gives them also this mindset that they think they know it all. They can also go out there and narrate other people's histories. This is why we have a problem. For example, how he presents the fact that there is a problem with Ndebeles when we look at the so-called Ndebeles, their entry into Zimbabwe. And then he goes on to talk about Mzilikazi and talks about Abensha. Let me make this thing very clear. We did not at any given time among the Ndebele king, within the Ndebele kingdom, there was never such a caste system. There was never such stratification of Abensha and so forth. It is not Ndebele. It is not a system that you find within the Ndebele. It was not a caste system that you found. And we must also understand, Mzilikazi was a Pan-Africanist. And I'm surprised that Maponga himself presents or pretends to be a Pan-Africanist, but he seems not to understand the founding fathers of Pan-Africanism from Southern Africa. That it is Mzilikazi and Inkosi Pengula and Inkosi Shaka. Those are Pan-Africanists. Because when Mzilikazi arrives, for example, in the present day Matebelele, the first thing he does is he submits to Inkosi Yamakhalanga, Umambo Tumbali. And when he submits to Inkosi Yamakhalanga, Umambo Tumbali, and Bagamambo Tumbali, we still relate with them. And for your information, I relate with them at a very personal level myself. So I don't need to ask Maponga to be telling me this history. I know it better than him. In fact, I can lead him to those people. About Bagamambo Tumbali, when he arrives there, he finds them bekonza eziguma secret places on allow amanyakade wakam. And when he arrives there, wanikela ngenkomo ezilikhulu ezimnyama. Because when he found them there, he found, you must understand one thing. By the time Mzilikazi arrives, two groups, I can even say 3 groups had already passed that area. One, Nkosazana, Ukwinyamazana. Owayehambe wayasekla lamhlanje wahambe wayasekla waze wabumba isigodlo sakhe okuthiwa umtilikwa. Next to Umfula, that today Omaponga lava, they bastardized and called it to Umtirikwe River. That word Umtirikwe River itself comes from Isiswati, esithi umutilikwa, umuzobukwa, muti likwa, umuzobukwa. We even know the grave eseceleni ngomfula lwana with a certain mountain ekhona ungqamane kamaseko, umaseko actually. Umaseko nguye connected with the Amaswazi, nabosmelana. So we know this history. And that said, we also know ukuthi another big party that had gone past ehamba yaze yafika ebushona elizweni leli, for lack of a better word for the purposes of this engagement, zakuthi ebushona, because I don't think they were called that at that time. Owahamba wayadlula wayafika le inkosi uzwa ngendaba esikwazi ukuthi wayesuke koZwide okazwide uZwide kaNcumane. We know this. We also know that uZwangendaba traversed more than 5 countries. To be precise, I would even add 2 and say 7. uZwangendaba wakrosa wangena present day Zimbabwe, ukuthi ubesuke present day South Africa, wangena present day Swaziland, wakrosa from present day Swaziland wangena Mozambique, wakrosa from present day Mozambique ngoba kuyikuthi usuke eSwaziland ngoba nje wayelezi hlobo ezazilaphana, wakrosa and got into present day as we speak, present day Mozambique, because kwakulezi hlobo futhi eziyizona ezabuma uMaputo, inkosi uMaputo wadlula kunkosi uMaputo wangena present day Zimbabwe. When he entered into present day Zimbabwe, we know what inkosi uZwangendaba did to lo abambiza bathi umuntu Mutapa. He skinned him alive. That's a subject for another day, which I hope Maponga knows. And it is actually the one that actually sullies the Ndebele and the Shona relations that we are talking about. because there is a tendency by people to actually conflate these narratives for lack of knowledge. And it would appear Maponga is one of those people that are just parroting some of these things without this knowledge. Possibly it will be important for them to come and talk to some of us. You see, the problem is they think they know, because the Zimbabwean Shona narrative and Shona nationalists have always engraved in themselves this and carved this superiority mindset, which brings in this mindset that gives people the perspective that ultimately they know it better, they know it all than anyone else, when in fact they should be engaging everyone. For example, the folkloric, commonsensical, nonsensical narrative that they are pandering to, that he is also pandering to as the precursor, if you like, to this thing that you now refer to as the basis, you know, to the Kukuraundi claiming that it was because of the Mzilikazi raids and so forth, fails to acknowledge the role that was played by Queen Nyamazana and also the Inkosi uZwang'endaba before he proceeded to what we have today as the state of Zambia, Malawi, Uganda, in fact, if you didn't know, up to Tanzania before he retraced his steps. But what he did in Zimbabwe was actually worse than you can think of. And Zwang'endaba was not actually marching and was trudging on with the Ndebele, the so-called Ndebele. He wasn't doing that. By the time Ziligas arrives there, Zwang'endaba had already passed through. And the other person who had already passed through, going to the north, but the western side, via Namibia, present-day Namibia, Musibindwan. You may have heard about Musibindwan, Namakololo. Is another, this is another person who actually passed through that. And when Mzilikazi even gets lost following, when he gets to what we have today as Kalahari, he goes past a place in Botswana that is called Ekang. If you go to Botswana, I spent time, if you check one of my writings, I interviewed the former president of Botswana, the late Seketumile Masire, who came from Ekang. He was a Mwaketsi. The Mwaketsi actually are called abantu Bekanye because when Mzilikazi got there, watola abantu ababele baleli khanyayo. Because it was their way of mastering their geography. Wadlula there, these people of Ekanye actually told him, no, the people abafana lawe badlulila besiyale wangena was wayafika eKalahari, the present day Kalahari, and mayefika lapana you Goyane, and maybe Maponga, if he really claims to know history, he would also know that izibongo zenkosi zawonke amakhosi ethu thina manguni zibika istory indaba esithi ngumlando of our journeys empilweni zethu masiphila umlando. Now when Mzilikazi goes past Ekanye, he enters what we call iKalahari. Imbongi yakhe imbiza ithini xa eseKalahari, ithi utshani bude buse mahaliha wothi mnyakana buchayo wochani michaya amadoda, right? Because it narrates the history of him traversing Southern Africa. And when he goes past that place, he goes past up to a place called present-day Katimamlilo. I have been there. I spent time with some of the chiefs and queens there, the princes and princesses at Katimamlilo. They even explained something that was very...
Yeah, just 1 minute.
Yes, they also explained something that really fascinated me when I got there, because they also narrated to me that the name Katimamlilo itself comes from the word Watimamlilo, and they confirmed it, the people from Namibia, which actually confirms some of these things. So now, in a nutshell, when you look at this narrative that is presented, it is actually what we call nationalist verbiage, which actually is clearly rooted in the usual Shona narrative, whose focus was to actually direct the line of yearning for the the broader structural arrangement that we ultimately have today as Zimbabwe. And
Okay,
let me
Dr. Sigabade,
let me conclude, Wayane.
All right, conclude.
Let me conclude by also saying, Maponga also in his presentation says to us that he keeps referring to this thing called Zimbabwe. When Umzilikazi arrives, kwakungela Zimbabwe. And this must be known.
Okay.
There was kwakungela Zimbabwe. Even inkosi yayikhona yayingumambo Tumbali yamakhalaka.
All right. No. Thank you, Dr. Sigabade.
It is important to know
Mr.
this.
Chikovhi.
Yeah. Anyway, Wayane, I will not stay longer with you guys, but I will be here to hear what these guys are saying before I proceed. Because I have also visitors and other things to be doing here.
No, thanks very much, Dr. Sigabade. Mr. Chikovhi.
That's all right.
I'm coming to you, but what I'm asking, can you just listen, please? What I'm asking is that we respect each other. I am facilitating, I am moderating. Now it's over to you. When other contributors are making their contributions, can you please keep quiet? I'm asking you. Now is your opportunity to give us whatever you have. Thank you, sir.
All right. To revert back to the debate topic, which is the state of Shona-Ndebele relations pre and post-independence. We're talking during the era of the Chimurenga Wars, which is pre-independence, and then post-independence, we're talking that now after Gukurahundi and the likes, as you highlighted. So, as I would like to say now, the state of the relations of Shona-Ndebele relations are more of political paranoia or sort of political gambit at play. Because right now, as you gave the stage to the two respective gentlemen, they both took the direction of narrating history, which is good. It's part of giving context to the debate. I've to give my debate line. This would be my debate line. The Ndebele people came to a land they had to conquer in order to inhabit, which, consistent with European settlement, they proceeded to subject native population to land dispossession, displacement, post-cultural assimilation, all insidious and unforgettable hostile acts that in today's legal language constitute into human rights abuses. This loud arrival and stay left psychological effects that culminated in pre-independence or Chimurenga era Shona-Ndebele relations characterized by a shared sense of, if I could say, a shared sense of fear and mistrust. The Ndebele mistrusting and fearing Shona revenge, and Shona fearing and mistrusting duty. The duty they only ever known. So in terms of like going back historically, we can't necessarily dwell on that aspect without necessarily focusing on the feelings that have came onto the people, the average people. So the average person doesn't have all the information that these two gentlemen have had the luxury of accumulating, which is going out into what you call into Madun or certain states in order to accumulate that information from like a royal or a certain particular individual of certain prominence, even throughout their generations. So what I would like to say is we need to go back to trying to achieve consensus. And in trying to achieve consensus, I think that's where we can necessarily achieve what we would like to call understanding where each of us are coming from. It's a side of, it's about feelings. It's not necessarily about necessarily knowledge, because as now I reiterate that the average person doesn't have all that much information about this. Hence, I would like to say, yeah, let's go back to addressing that, the issue of Shona-Ndebele relations, pre and post-independence. I think that's about what I'd like to say as my opening remarks.
No, thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Dr. Ndlovu, we welcome you, sir. I know you were having some technical issues. I've been trying to admit you several times, but we are happy you are here. Now, over to you. I think you know exactly what we're talking about. So I'm not going to explain. Give us what you have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nkala. I hope you can hear me from that end. Please confirm.
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. Let me greet the gentlemen, Bishop Maponga, Mr. Chikovhi, Dr. Sigabade. It's great to be amongst you gentlemen. Right. Siyabonga. Yes. Without further ado, I've seen the question. In fact, I've seen the topic and I've heard the presentations by the other gentlemen. They've been quite enlightening in many respects. Of course, it's a mixture of facts and it's a mixture of with vitriol here and there, imagination and creativity, historical creativity, if one could call it that. A lot of fabrication of history, fabrication of facts, agenda pushing, if one wants to call it that. But I will address that in a moment. Now, in my own presentation, I have decided to look at the history of this area called Zimbabwe. That is the area between Zambezi and the Limpopo, between 1840 to the present day. Well, maybe let's take it at 1838, because that's precisely the time when King Zilikazi established himself in that plateau. But as Professor Sigabade had indicated earlier, that there had been other groups, other Nguni groups that had come through. For instance, you know that he mentioned the influence of Inkosi Zwangendaba, and there was also mention of other Nguni groups like Onyamazana, Abonxaba, and so on. Now, interestingly, as I'm talking about this, I'm reminded of the fact that among the Shona people, we have people with surnames like Ojele, Ostole, Omtetwa, Ongwenya, Odube, who speak Shona as their language and they perceive themselves as Shona. I wonder if people in Mashonaland have ever asked themselves the question to say, how did those people come about having those names? Just as a summary, those people were dropped there. Some of them remained there and assimilated into the Shona community willingly, having been left there either by Zwangendaba or Nyamazana, or as some of them also would have filtered from this side, Soshangane and Nabongungunyane and so on, because that area has been, visited and inhabited by so many Nguni-speaking people. But sadly, of course, you find that all the carnage, all the suffering that the Shona people have gone through in the hands of the Ngunis is now being lumped on and it's being, attributed to the Ndebele willfully, while they know very well that there are some groups that went, as Professor Sigabade did indicate, as far as Tanzania. UZwangendaba ulele ngase-Tanzania njengamanje sikhuluma. IsiNguni siyakhulunywa eTanzania, sikhulunywe eMalawi, sikhulunywe eZambia, sikhulunywe parts of Mozambique, sikhulunywe eZimbabwe, sikhulunywe eSouth Africa. And so, and njengoba washo ubaba uSigabade, it was an issue of Pan-Africanism and movement across. But that has been said. Again, we ekutheni from 1838 ma Inkosi uMzilikazi ifika izinza kule ndawo, ifika ihlalisane kahle nezakhamizi zakuleyo ndawo. As it has already been indicated, the Ndebele with the Kalanga, with the Tonga, with the Nambia, they have shared very cordial relations, even up to the present day. For instance, a lot of people who are in Ndebele and who are deemed to be Ndebele are actually not Ndebele. When you speak to them, they will tell you they are either Kalanga or Tonga or whatever. But because of the cordial relations established by Inkosi Mzilikazi and his nation building skills, which Zimbabwe has regrettably failed to learn from, He actually integrated so many groups into one community called today known as Ndebele, as the people of Matabele. But the interesting thing, as I have said, all these claims that King Mzilika has pushed out the Shona people from Matabele is a lie. It's actually a lie from the pit of hell. It's a kind of imaginative creativity, because all the people that were inhabiting Matabele when Mzilikazi came and arrived at that place, they are still there even today. Mauya lapha eNyathi, that's the area close to my own homestead. Kukhona intaba lapha ebizwa kuthiwa intaba zikaMambo. UMambo lo okhulunywa ngaye uMambo wesikhalangeni, nabantu bakhe basaphila kule ndawo nanamhlanje. Abanye babo sebekhuluma isiNdebele, of course, ngoba bephile phakathi kwamaNdebele, but that assimilation took place within that context. So akuzange kube nento leyo ama-massacres nama-genocide la sizwe sokuthiwa iGugurawundi massacring up to 40,000 Ndebele speaking people yayikwenza in retaliation for ama-massacre. That is creativity, and that is very mischievous. Anybody who peddles that knows very well within the deepest conscience of themselves that they are just lying through their teeth. Right, so from 1838 to 1840 to about 1890, the Ndebele established themselves in that plateau, and they have cordial relations with everybody across the Kalanga, the Abattoir, the Tonga, the Nambia, and so on. Even nabantu beShona-Ndebele kukhona amakhosi abedlelana nenkosi uMzilikazi, yingakho bekusiselwana ney'nkomo. Kanti lezi inkomo kwakukhulunywe ngazo okuthiwa khona zadala umbango le ngasendaweni yaseMaswini, zazifike kanjani lapho? And then uma ubuye ekutheni inkosi uMzilikazi iqhubeka idlelana nabantu kuze kufike ekutheni, because the Portuguese were still in the process of raiding parts of Mashonaland and capturing people, turning them into slaves. Some of those people, as far as Ochirezi and so on, they willingly submitted themselves to the authority of the Ndebele king, ukwenzela ukuthi babe protected from those those Portuguese raids that were turning them into slaves. All that has been silenced. Akukhulunywa ngayo lento mase kukhuluma abantu laba. So kukhulunywa nje ukusengezimikiyo right from left and right. So up to 1890 siyababona ke nxa sokuzofika ama-British baqale bayongena lapho, they take over Mashonaland without anybody throwing a single stone to resist colonization. And abakhulumi ngayo lento, mabekhuluma bathi inkosi uNobhengula yathengisa ilizwe ngeshukela. They even teach that to their children in the preschool, knowing very well ukuthi sikhuluma ngenkosi who fought to defend that country. And umlando wakhe uNobhengula uphelela ePupu, where he wiped out, together with his military contingent, he wiped out the British total British contingent eyabo Alan Winsett. Kakukhulunywa kuma syllabus ezikolo zaseZimbabwe lonke lokho. Kuthiwa umuntu owabulala 35 British people elwela ukudefend ilizwe walithengisa lelo lizwe ngeshukela. Abakhuzani, abatshelani ukuthi banamanga, kukho konke lokho. And meanwhile, mawuya lapha ngaseGadadi, ngase-David Livingstone, i-Battle of Mbembesi, i-Battle of Gadadi, kunamathuna lapho, kunethuna lomlungu, kunethuna leshona, kunethuna lomtswana, kunethuna lomndebele. Now, when you ask yourself one critical question, we know the Ndebele were there because they were fighting to defend their territory. The British were there to conquer the Ndebele. And what were the Shona doing there? On whose side were they? The very people from Mashonaland who are claiming to love the country so much, they assisted the British to colonize that same country which today they claim to love so much and to be defending. And they are not teaching that to their children in the schools because they are busy fabricating stories and making all kinds of imaginative stories. Then, as we again, that number one, decolonization of Mashonaland was done without throwing a single stone. But decolonization of Matabeleland cost lives. That's why it's not vehicles, that's why that's why this is where the fighting took place, and this is where so many white soldiers or black soldiers perished and so on. But we have none of that among the Shona people. And meanwhile, they are in the forefront of telling us they defend that country, they love that country. Now, akubuye lapha ekutheni this very first war asebeyibiza bethi Chimurenga, that's mischief that. Because le mpi yaqalwa ngamaNdebele yaqalwa indlovukazi uLozikeyi. uLozikeyi nguye wahamba phambili empini yehlobo elibomvu. So bona sebenebizo labo lesishona empini yaqalwa ngamaNdebele. And they want us to all embrace that creative word ethiwa Chimurenga, knowing free well it's just fabrication. They didn't do anything to that war. They just joined a war that was already being fought, and amaNdebele had already lost their kith and kin in that bit. Akukhulunywa konke lokho. Right. Fast forward from 1895, right, when the country has been taken over. Remember, Zimbabwe is just a British contraption. It did not exist before the occupation of Matabeleland in 1894. So even bayakwazi these territories were administered as two territories subjoining up to 1923. That's a story for another day. But fast forward then to 1950s and 1960s or even 1940s, sisibona ukuhlangana kwabo oBenjamin Burombo, Social Ndlovu nabanye coming together up to era yabo Joshua Nkomo, labo ngobani laba omgabe uNothon Maliyanga nabanye nje that era. So kufonywa abo NDP nabo ZAPU. Sibona abantu sokungani basebenza ndawonye. You think, oh, okay, all these stories about massacres and genocides from Ziligas and so on, they are now a thing of the past. Ungathi kusetshenzwa ndawonye. Then 1961 formation of ZAPU. Ungathi there is unity. That's why ubona abantu abajabo James Shikerema bakhona lapho, they are in the forefront. Later on, abantu abajabo Joseph Msika, abantu abajabo Josiah Chinamani, labo Ambrose Mtiniri, nabo Chirira basala belokho bekhona kuZAPU. Then now kamashona sephuma siyafoma izani. And then mase befoma izani, from that period up to 1979, the war, the relations are kind of confused, because kuZAPU kuZIPRA kukhona abantu abesishoneni, very high ranking in the military. Abantu abafana bomTiniri, I have mentioned them. Abantu abanjengabo Ropafatsi, uSibusiso lo walida i-2017 revolution, whatever you call it. Bonke labana abantu abanjengabo Chenjerai Hunzwi basala bekuZIPRA, basala bekuZAPU. So ZAPU was never a Ndebele thing. But nxa sebethumela ground, athi ZAPU is a Ndebele thing. They are now out to silence amaNdebele. But uHunzwi ke, uHunzwi asondebele, umTiniri asondebele. So right, fast forward here. So nxa sokusefika ku-1979, yikho sokubuya laphana, right, kulayo temporary unity kuyiwe Lancaster House, bayathola lokho abakutholayo, the country gets independence in courts, right, fine. Nxa sokusuka laphana, they unleash ground and they start tribalizing everything. So what we seem to have here is people who are very creative.
Baba Joe, if you can conclude it.
Okay, how many minutes?
1 minute.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. But the long and the short of it, then our relations, they have been this way and that way, but post 1980, they have severely been battered. Because manje ususizwa abanye besithi bona the Shona now have a strong army, which the Ndebele used to have under Mzilikazi. Maponga said it at some point, and I heard it. Ngasibuza ukuthi kati army le after 1980, is it a Shona army? Is it a Ndebele army? Is it not a Zimbabwean army? So now, if you are going to tell us that the Shona have control of superior weapons, are you then implying that there are two Zimbabwes? There's a Ndebele Zimbabwe and there's a Shona Zimbabwe, and the Shona Zimbabwe is the one that is the military. Then it's Basola Nigelaba MRP Nabani Mabetibona. Because we have two Zimbabweans, it's a fate comply. Let us just split it into two. Because in narrative, the Maponga speaks to that very thing. Is Zimbabwe Zimbabwe Amandi, Zimbabwe Amashon. So Magunjalo, Ungani Meles Kubeke Pelanga Zimbabwe.
Okay. All right. No, thanks very much, Dr. Ndlovu. I'm coming to you, Baba Maponga. Could you please answer this question and then also respond to what you have heard from Dr. Sigabade and from Dr. Ndlovu? The question is, when Mziligas arrived in what is now known as Zimbabwe, What did he do to the Shona people? Thank you.
I think maybe I would start off maybe with an apology that this conversation is misaligned. Half of what I'm hearing reminds me of my theological days. That it's like I'm in an apologist conversation where people are trying to work on what I presented without presenting their own story. I said in my opening remarks, if they are those that have information, Babu Kabatela, he went on to lacerate me at his own leisure. But he also did this. Let's say he went to Namibia, Katima Mlilo. I've been to Katima Mlilo also. I've met up with those chiefs and etc. I've been to Zambia. I've met up with the tradition. I went even to Tanzania and stuff like that. And it's not about proving to each other who speaks better. I'm asking a simple question. And I want Babu Ndlovu or Babu Sigabade just to take us through meticulously, if possible, can postpone this conversation and we can write documents. They can write, I can write, we can consolidate. We need these stories, this narrative to be corrected. And the language I'm hearing from Dr. Ndlovu, Nina Mashona, they don't teach their children. They don't do. Again, the language of them and us, they and us, seems to be in perpetuity. And I don't think we're going to go anywhere. So it won't be necessary for me to further infuriate people and share exactly what I think. Maybe let's hear the correct narrative rather than picking.
Mapong, I think this is an opportunity to hear each other, to share different perspectives, to share different narratives. Whoever is right, whoever is wrong, let's leave that to the people. But let us here share what we know. Give us your perspective. Particularly, I'm so interested in hearing from you, what did Mzilikazi do to the Shona people when he arrived in Zimbabwe, or in what is called Zimbabwe now? What did Mzilikazi do?
The arrival of Mzilikazi here with the Central Regiment, which was maybe the last group that came in here, settled in what we call now Ndebele land. The only authentic oral tradition I could have will be the praises of the king himself, where the conquests of his arrival here are tabulated and they cannot be disputed. The other oral traditions that are found within the communities of Domboshava, Chipinge, Masingo, Churumanzu are all public knowledge, but I know it will offend people. So I don't think it will be necessary for me to mention exactly what happened, but maybe we can just find out when they were traveling in these places, what were they doing? Did they go there to stay? Did they go there to pick up something? Did they go there to visit the Zimbabwe ruins? They buried their loved ones in Mutirikwi. Is that not part of the colonization again, when you get to a place and you name it as if it had no name before you got there? Where Victoria Falls, which was named after Moffat, got there. So when people that are powerful and they conquer you and they name the places after whoever they name them, you cannot then later on walk and claim that history. Maybe the narrative also I'm trying to say, that in the moment of glory, when you overcome and you overpower people and you delete some history, you rewrite some history, you consolidate. And I hear from Professor Ndlovu, Dr. Ndlovu, he constantly keeps on saying he had cordial relationships. He had cordial relationships. He had cordial relationships with the local people. But the story that my grandfather told, my grandfather, who was born in 1861, 1862, does not tell me a cordial relationship. The Churumanzu and the Charumbira families in Mkirikwi, and they are not talking about cordial relationships. The vendors and the Kalangas are not talking about cordial relationships. So maybe in as much as we are trying to sanitize, and I think that's why I'm saying maybe I feel like I'm in a theology class where we have become apologists, trying to justify or to prove to each other. And maybe the whole conversation for me has deteriorated to another platform where I thought that someone would come and say, these are the nations that we conquered. These are the nations that we overcame. These are the lands that we moved on to. And our history is like this. And we can then interrogate that. So since I've already been declared persona non grata, to be uninformed, I don't know, I should learn, I'm prepared. I have all the time. Dr. Sigabade and Ndlovu can take me through the lesson. I'll make adjustments in my presentation as I go along. So let me be a student. I thank you.
Okay, no, thanks very much, Baba Maponga. As I said, we are here to exchange different views. We are interested at hearing what you have. But if you feel you want to withhold, because from what you were saying when you were with DJ Spoo, you were saying when Mzilikas came there, he rated the Shona people in terms of women, children, cattle, things like that. So I'm asking you a simple question. What did Mzilikas do when he arrived in Zimbabwe? It seems you do not have.
No, he did nothing. He greeted us. He greeted us, and we welcomed. He greeted us, and we celebrated together, and we had some kombucha to drink together. If you're asking me what did I say, and you played a video at the beginning, and you're asking me what did he do, maybe we drank water together, and we lived happily ever after.
No, I was hoping that we were going to have a very constructive.
Oyane, let's proceed. Oyane, we should proceed.
In my sarcasm, you can hear when you played the video at the beginning where I stated my case, and without the interview with the DJ's book, and the conversation emanates from there. So if it was a conversation, let's go back to the video. What did you mean when you said this? What did you mean when you said this? And maybe I can account for what I said. But hearing the gentlemen who are more informed than I am coming on the platform, let's not waste time to be piggybacking on each other. Let the correct narrative be spoken. Let me learn also from those that know better than I am. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not being sarcastic.
Okay.
I'm saying let me learn. Because otherwise, if it is a punch on punch, then we're going to lose it altogether. And, yeah.
Okay.
So let me learn. Let me learn.
That. I respect that.
Let me learn. Let's start Mzilika's story from where it starts. Let's go slowly. Or if you want to work from the Zimbabwe space coming this way, or you want to just pick up on the Gukura Hundi, wherever you want to have your beginning point. And then I can learn. I'm here. I'm open-minded. I don't know everything. Okay. Others seem to know more than I know. So I'll keep quiet. And in as much as you know me from my past, I don't like some of the comments that you're passing. You know the problems I had in Swaziland. You know what it's not about personal, you knowing me as an Adventist or not. I'm not claiming that I lived with Solitini. I'm not claiming that I lived with the Royal House in Swaziland. I'm not claiming that. I'm not claiming that I met Nyabela. I'm not claiming that I was in Klaken. I live to trace some history while I'm doing my travels. So you did your narrative of you traveling around the world. By no ways is it superior to my narrative. Also traveling around the world, we pick up various information. I'm not peddling some ZANU-PF or some Shona narrative. If I could use your own words, then you're also peddling some Zulu-Ndebele narrative. Then each narrative has its own peddling. So why bother talking to each other? The purpose of the conversation is to find middle ground. And you don't have to try and prove to be superior in any way. That I study, I research, as if I also don't know how to read. I've studied and I've traveled also. I am where I am because I read and I study and I learn from people like you. But you don't have to down-look and down-prod and stumble on me to prove that you are superior in knowledge. You have been where you've been. I have been where I've been. You know what you know. I know what I know. At the end of the day, we are here on his platform to share ideas, not personal information about what you know about me. What do I also know about you? Is it necessary? Is it important for us to discuss you or me on this platform?
Maybe it might be
discuss history? I'm still talking. I'm still talking. I'm still talking also. And I'm still talking. So if you want to talk about things,
no, you are addressing me, so I have a right to respond.
Now you respond, Sigabade. You respond.
I have a right to respond.
And I'm glad he responded. I'm glad that he responded.
Using his line of thinking.
I'm glad that he responded, because when he said I was running a monologue and etc., and I responded,
because you are directing it to me directly, so I will respond and tell you exactly what you are saying.
You also directed it to me, and I'm glad we're equal now. We're even. When you mention personal stuff,
then let's carry on.
It's your turn now, Baba Maponga. If you can conclude now.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
He's concluded. Let me proceed.
All right, yeah, it's over to you, Baba Sigabade.
Well, I think we have a problem already. You can see it. It's clear here. The gentleman started by giving us his monologue of his travels, where he has been, who he has met, this Tetwa guy, this King Bungane, and so forth. And when I actually, basically what I did was I caused us to discover him. This is the problem. When these people who start on a narrative of authentic, of trying to cause themselves to be authentic when it's not necessary. You see, this discussion that we're supposed to be having today is about where are we supposed to be going as Zimbabwe? And as Zimbabweans, if it's possible. But the moment you have someone who begins or who decides to engage his narrative from the premise of presenting his travels, where he have been, where he has been, you know, giving you a diary of his travels, who he has met, what they said, what they drank at that particular time, then there is a problem, because we might be forced then to unmask them. What I did was just to highlight to him that I actually know him from Solusi. I know him. I even highlighted that I remember him from Rusangu, Zambia. I even reminded him that I know him even in the case of Swaziland. I know everything that he went through. I understand, I remember his days. I even know what was happening when he was in Rusangu and the challenges that he faced when he was there in Swaziland, for example. So look, now he is pleading that we should be as brothers prepared to sit at the table of brotherhood and engage each other and exchange ideas and share knowledge. He should have started at that level. It appears Maponga has now realized the importance of brotherhood. That's why he is going theological. I don't have a problem with him going theological. I'm a student of philosophy. I can engage him at that level. I'm not afraid of that. But here we are talking about the history of a people. The history of a people that are actually scarred, both Ndebele and Shona. It is important that people like Maponga must actually be brought to line to understand that they are messing about with the narratives of a people. You can't just pretend you know it all and then suddenly pretend you don't have knowledge. Let me highlight a few things. I liked what this gentleman, I'm sorry, I nearly called him young man, Chikovhi. I liked what he said. To be honest, I liked what he said. The idea that, look, let us possess ourselves, call each other to book and try as people who are in this forum to engage each other on the, look, let's look at the way we can take this space that we call Zimbabwe, that exists between Limpopo and Zambezi, forward and say what are our permutations, what are our reflections on the future of this space, because we all inhabit it. We can actually inhabit it in conviviality. We can do that. It's possible. But it is important, and I wanted to say also to what Chikovhi said, that he said we went on to history. History is very important, because history is not just about the past, it is about the future. History is the geography of our lives, and it tells us who we are, where we have been, who we were, where we still must go. History teaches us all those things. So it is important, maybe, my brother Chikovhi, for us to engage each other at that level. From a convivial perspective, we can actually agree to disagree where possible, but still go forward as a people. It is normal. But then where there is a problem is when someone presents a narrative of a history of a people which actually is false, to tell us that because his grandfather was put in a basket and hidden in some cave somewhere in a mountain in 1866, it was the Ndebele. Let me, Hoyane, you had a question that you asked Maponga and he didn't answer it. Mzilikazi, like I said earlier on, Inkosi Mzilikazi, by the time he arrived in the present-day Matabeleland, in the present-day Matabeleland, which is now in the present-day Zimbabwe, there was no Zimbabwe, first. We must know this. Two, there had been other Nguni groups that had gone past. And it was possible, actually, that by the time he arrived, those Nguni groups that had gone past it may have pillaged. For example, the one group that we know for a fact that by the time it went past and proceeded to present-day Zambia, Malawi, Tanzania, Uganda, they had done so much. It is the group that was led by Inkosi Uzwangendaba. And we know, if Maponga does not know, that Inkosi Uzwangendaba is the one who actually literally captured Uchangamire Tombo, abathi ngumunu mutapa, and skinned him alive like you would do a god. Something that was never heard of, which the Ndebele didn't do. And he was doing that as Uzwangendaba, not with the Ndebele, the so-called Ndebele today, this group that we now call the Ndebele, whom Maponga feels my great-grandfathers and others are guilty of because Babu ya lelo kuzen. Phela mina ngiyisilulu sikamalande. So lami ngileqala kuye uMaponga lo ngokuthi ngamfaka mina entabeni esitshwe eqamba manga. It didn't happen. Now, the issue that we have to acknowledge, which also Dr. Ndlovu acknowledged, is the element of conviviality when Inkosi Mzilikazi arrives. This is a Pan-Africanist leader who arrives in the land of a people and understands what these people that he has arrived, they have their own spirituality, which is the reason why when he arrives there, he presents himself to Umambo Tumbale Wamakalanga. And when he presents himself to Umambo Tumbale Wamakalanga, he even goes on 100 inkomezi mnyama. And when he does that, immediately after doing that, the second thing that he does, he literally pleads with Inkosi Umambo Tumbale ukuthi umhlatshiso womuntu awuphele, akuhlatshiswe ngoba kwakhiwa isizwe ngomuntu, kwakhiwe isizwe umhlatshiso uqhubeke ungowenkomo. That is why inkomo ezilikhulu zanikelwa enjelele. I am a product of injelele too, in case Maponga does not know this. Now I will tell him some of these things. Maponga is talking to me, ngiyinkosi futhi lami, ngoba ngiyinduna. And I want him to know some of these things. This is the history that he pretends to present as oral history. We also know it. We may know our history better than him. We are the knowers of our history. In philosophy, Woyane, we have something that is called to epoche. To epoche is to bracket. It means give the insiders the benefit of doubt that they know their story better than you, the outsider. Maponga kasinike leyo benefit. Having said that, I want to conclude. Having said that, when Inkosi Mzilikazi arrived, waphila with an agreement lenkosi uMambo Tumbale. Yikho silengoma thina esikhule siyihlabela ethi kudala kwakunganje umhlaba uyaphenduka kwakusumambo lomzilikazi. UMambo lo that we are referring to is not the Shona Mambo. He is actually uMambo Tumbale. We grew up knowing that esintwini sakithi umzilikazi is a Pan-Africanist, Mambo Tumbale is Pan-Africanist. They were able ukuba lenkunzi ezimbili ziphila ngasibaya sinye side by side zibusisizwe. uMambo Tumbale when he finally passed on, wachiya abantu bakhe besenkosini umzilikazi. Umzilikazi did not use the spear. uMambo Tumbale, he did not use the spear emanambiyeni. He did not use the spear ematongeni. That is why the day umzilikazi imntanakhe uLobhengula decided ukusuka echise umuzi wobukhosi bakhe kwaBulawayo, esuka ecrossa ehamba impilo ekade khulunywa ngumfowethu uDr Ndlovu eGadade izimbi zeGadade lale eyasePhupu ecrossa elupane abantu abamthungamelayo babe ngabestonga, and I have contact of one of the great grandsons of Inkosi uPashu eyiyona eyathungamela umntana enkosi. I have contact with that person because umuzi wakwethu ukhona hapo, ngikhulele khona, ngikhulele ngiselusela khona. So these are some of the stories that need to be told. O abafowethu labo Maponga nxa befuna ukupresenta a history, they must be prepared to present a history esizayakha ngayo, not this Shona narrative of nationalist verbiage, whose mindset is designed to present a narrative of confounding the other, conquering the other, when Zimbabwe is in a mess the way it is. Akula anything that they can be proud of. They claim to have confounded, they claim to have conquered. Where is Zimbabwe today?
Okay. All right, Dr. Sigabade, thanks very much for that. Let me go to Mr. Chikovhi. Any comments?
Well, my comment, thank you, Doc, for what you call for recognition upon what I had said previously. So, what I can say is, Maponga is bringing into the frame a narrative which is, it cannot be said that it's wrong, or it cannot be said that it cannot be dismissed, because it's a narrative that in fact exists in amongst people, as I repeat or as I reiterate from what I had said previously. This is not necessarily about like people with doctorates and higher learning higher learning certificates. So this regards the average day-to-day person and politics, the politics of our people. Hence, you spoke when you presented the topic. You had spoken about the relations in between Shonas and Ndebeles, not Shona intellectuals and Ndebele intellectuals. So what I can say is that in that statement comes the average person narrative, which is the narrative of that this was done unto us. And some people actually have lived experiences, whereas Maponga highlights that his grandfather had a certain lived experience. My own grandfather tells of certain lived experiences of Ndebele hate or Ndebele feelings of ethnic division in between Ndebeles and Shonas. Ndebeles, I'm not saying that you're bringing violence, you've brought violence as a Ndebele person. However, no. What I'm saying is in the feelings, in the slew of feelings that are existed by our narratives, different visions of how we came unto or how we brought unto certain things, certain nations, certain states. In that then comes a manifestation of these feelings to average people, whereby we're told these stories are extended unto every other generation that comes on, and we're taught these sort of boundaries, not necessarily taught to say, okay, let's reconcile. As what was done in South Africa where I grew up, reconciliation, they spoke about all the time in schools. What they do in terms of their history, they haven't necessarily focused on the atrocities that much and saying, because if you do remember, Inkatha Freedom Party and the ANC engaged in what was called the Boipatong massacre. But most people in SA don't even know about that. Not that it's what you call, not that it's denied for them to know about it. However, they created a new reality, of which that's what I'm saying, that this topic, the debate topic that had been stated, of the state of Shona-Ndebele relations, was supposedly a topic that was supposed to, as it even states itself, that was supposed to highlight relations in amongst the people and the way forward from those particular relations. Hence, I would reiterate the truth of that. It's not necessarily about who can best the other in terms of knowledge. If we do that, we're alienating the average person. This conversation is only for the few. It won't necessarily reach the masses. And the masses want to hear a way forward. They don't want to hear of the past. They know the past from the narratives that they know. They are not interested in going through the robust information that of which all these respectable gentlemen are talking about. It is important information. I'm not saying that it's ridiculous and it's useless. No, I'm saying although history is important to offer context to whom we are as a people, as Zimbabwe, or as individual states of peoples, it is also very important to know that in order for us to go forward, we need to act as if the past, okay, for the moment, it didn't necessarily happen. In order for us to engage, or it didn't happen the way we're told or we've been instilled to say this is what happened to you, Maponga, and this is what happened to you, Dr. Gumede, and this is what happened to you, Mr. Philani, and so on and so on. So as I'll reiterate, like in terms of the South African context, the South African context brings to light what we're running away from, which is we really need as Zimbabwe to engage, and to engage at a point whereby people feel for each other, not necessarily, as I say, empathy. Empathy is needed in this topic, and empathy is what actually would consolidate or bring us to consensus, towards consensus, where we all agree to a future, not the past, because the past will never agree. As I'll again repeat, people are telling of their own experiences, not just narratives. These are not just narratives. People have experiences. Others say we're co-opted, we're brought in, assimilated by force into these certain into these certain peoples that we're now part of, or were taken and were put this place. And there's others who can relate their history, their own familial history, to the history of the Shonas. Others within the Shona peoples, they relate their familiar history to Ndebele peoples, of which all this, to sort all of this out, we'll never really do that. We'll never really achieve that. Because I come from a political background, which is I'm still a youth. I'm not necessarily a senior. I'm still a youth. However, in amongst that, in amongst my fellow youth, we do not necessarily look towards or look backwards and say, guys, let's actually deliberate. No, we're worried about the current state of things. We're worried about unemployment. We're worried about a way forward, the country's peace. Is there unity, development, and peace? Is there all of that? That's what we're worried about. And hence, we're all, a large number of young people are caught in this sort of need to hear someone talk, talk a different future, talk a future whereby we go towards something, not the past. Because the past, it can't be sorted. We've all discovered that. The Nazis tried it, they failed. South Africans decided, let's leave the past, let's go reconciliation. And I think if we were to go reconciliation, maybe we'd learn from them. They seem to have done it pretty well. The Zulus seem to get along. If you go to Johannesburg, people seem to share conversations with whatever language they want, and they're getting along just fine. Maybe they have whatever grudges they have, but it's not as intense. This is intense. We couldn't even have a constructive conversation around the state of Shona-Ndebele relations, which is this is a panel of very respectable men in terms of academia. These are big minds, and we're looking towards you. I'm a young person, and I'm not embarrassed to say this on this panel, that I look towards men such as Maponga. I look towards men such as Utogode. I look towards men Prof. Would come up with solutions for the future, not the past. You're telling us past, yes, the past, all of that, but you want to know, where do we go from here? We're here now. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Chikovhi, I hear what you are saying. Can I?
No. Mfunu acknowledge, mfunu recognize.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
After all, you are a very wise young man. This is the future of Zimbabwe that we want to hear speaking. I have been an activist all my life, here's Wayan. And rarely have I come across this kind of intense engagement. I've been an activist. I fought for Zimbabwe for a long time until I discovered that Zimbabwe actually rejects me who loves it so much. Today I met a young man who speaks like Chikovhi. Chikovhi, I'm proud of you. If we can only have 1 million Chikovhis, we will change Zimbabwe. We will make people like my brother Maponga revel and marvel at the oasis of hope SFCC created for posterity. Only if we can do that. They believe in the history. You and me are victim. I am a victim of and survivor of Kukrahundi. You are a victim, Chikovhi, of Kukrahundi. That's why you want the future, because this Kukrahundi thing is holding you back, and I'm proud of you. Yazuguti, I am so proud of you, Chikovhi. You don't know how proud I am, but to tell you the truth, I am shocked that we have young people who are as clear as you are. If we can have 1 million of them, we can change Zimbabwe, Chikovhi. Thank you so much for what you said. I got you.
Okay, no, thanks very much. All right. Sorry. Let me come to Dr. Ndlovu.
Oh, sanibona njalo. Good evening. Magadi Chikovhi. Should I say Chikovhi? Oh, I say Manangu Chikovhi. What must I say?
Chero, zvinoita.
Inzwaika mwanangu chinhu chakaitika ka. Imimi vana vadiki vakatengeswa nababa namama. Ndo vakatadza nyika. Uri kuzinzwa? You know what happened was I tried to sketch out a history. If I can take you back, I say from around 1950s to 1960s, from around 1940s to about 1960s, there seemed to be a unity between these ethnic groups, the Ndebele and the Shona. If you read during that period, that's when we have significant cooperation between them. And then, but sometime in 1963, something happens. But even, of course, that's when ZANU is formed. We don't want to allege tribalism there, but we can see some traces of it. But as you go from 1963 to 1979, you continue to see some cooperation, even though you get the impression that you have ZAPU as a Ndebele organization and ZANU as a Shona organization. It doesn't appear that way historically during that period, because like I gave you an example of the fact that ZAPU had the likes of Josiah Chinamano, Joseph Musika, Chenjerai Hunzi, who were clearly Shona, but they were leaders in ZAPU, if you remember that part. Then even within ZANU, of course, we have had people like Innocent Kala, you know, they were in the forefront. So you could not have said that those were tribal groupings. So one could say some nationalist Zimbabwean organizations and entities had been established between 1950 and 1979. But the problem arises after 1979 when elections are held and then Zimbabwe gains independence, and then the element of greed comes in. And then that's where now we see some plotting by people in one part of the country, plotting using a history which one would say had been condoned. Because, for instance, if Ndebele had terrorized the Shona, as we were told, in the 1840s to maybe 1890, one would say then this cooperation between 1950 and 1979 seems to have sanitized the relations, because now we see the Ndebele and the Shona coming together as Zipra, as Zandla, working together as a unity. So then the question that arises is, why then after 1980 do we revert to the 1840s history if it's not an issue of being dishonest? Because if we had managed to work together in the 1960s and 1970s, why do the 1840s then arise again in 1980 to 1987? Somebody somewhere is being mischievous, because now there is a loot, the war has been won. Now there is a cake to be eaten. Somebody decides that now we are going to revert to the issues of the past. We're going to isolate so and so, and then we are going to try and now, get things to work for us. But I like your concerns, Mr. Chikovhi, when you say, as a young person, you are not too obsessed with asking questions about this history, because you are looking at posterity, you are looking at tomorrow. And like as I began by saying, bakuru ndo vakakutengesai bana, nenyaya yekuti they wanted food, they wanted greed for themselves. As a result, they threw away the principles, and then they decided to work on what was convenient. That's why it's still surprising that today you still have people who would want to, very senior people who are here saying we have a Shona army which is now controlling things. But as I said earlier, it can't be a Shona army if it is Zimbabwean army, because a Zimbabwean army has everybody. It has integrated everybody into the Zimbabwe National Army. But if we have people who still think along the lines that it is a Shona army or it's a Ndebele army, then it is a clear indication that we have some dishonesty somewhere. Hence, I keep asking the question, if there is a Shona army, then does it mean we have two Zimbabwe's? And if we have two Zimbabwe's, what is the solution for those two Zimbabwe's? Should we integrate them into one, and how do we do that? Or are those who are calling for secession justified if there are two Zimbabwe's? That question still remains. So we cannot continue to criminalize the talk from those who are saying they want a separate state, if we are going to talk as if there are two Zimbabwe's. Because if we are going to have a system that tries to silence the history from one section of the community, for instance, I believe as a young man, you may not have read about Zipra's exploits in the war. You may not know that they downed 2 Viscounts aircraft. You may not even know about their role in the Zimbabwe liberation. You may not know about the role of Nkomo, the role of Alfred Nikita Mangena, the role of Lookout Masuku, the role of Dumiso Tabengo, and all these others. Because there was so much magnification of the role of the heroes from one section of the country. And we are saying, if we are really serious that we want to build one country, why do we hero worship people from one section and ignore those from the other section? How do we expect to build unity and build one country if we are going to be giving much attention to one group and not giving attention to the other? And as recently as last year, we had young girls or young ladies who were on television, national television, which is paid for through my tax as a citizen, saying that King Lopemula sold the country for just a morsel of bread or just for sugar. And they laughed about it on TV. Now imagine this, when somebody is sitting on national TV and is ridiculing Ndebele, is actually ridiculing everybody who speaks that language. And honestly, how do you expect to build a country when you are sitting in a country where every day you are being ridiculed through the institutions of the state, through the very institutions that are financed through your own tax? Because that's what ZPC is all about. But that is the nature of the things that we have been sitting with since time. From 1980, we have been going through this. We are ridiculed. Radio 2 would actually say, chi distant, distance chi. And then Ambo Yagacho Rapin distant in there on a national radio. And that national radio, I have to pay a license for that same radio. And by that time, I was a child. And now we have our good brother here, Joshua Maponga, articulating that his forefather, his grandfather was carried in a basket. I sympathize very much for that. But let me say this. I literally hid from Guguraundi. I'm not talking about what my grandfather did. I am talking about what I did. An AK-47 was pointed at me when I was in grade 4, a group of us. And at the time when that AK-47 was being pointed at us, we could hear the sound of an AK-47 out there in the distance. Some people were being killed, real people, and we did not know whether it was now going to be reality on us. We were going to. So we are not talking about having heard rumors of people who were assaulted. I was personally assaulted. So the difference now between 1840s and the current thing is that we have a generation of people that lived through Kukurahundi. We have sisters who were raped. We have mothers who were raped. We have people who were burnt alive. We have people who were decapitated and they lost their limbs. They are alive today, those same people. But as you say, this issue cannot be spoken, cannot be discussed in the public. There cannot be reconciliation where there is no truth, because the government of the day has not allowed an open conversation about Kukurahundi. So when you try to talk about Kukurahundi, you are criminalized, you are hunted down, you are vilified, you are sidelined, all kind of negative talk. And the unfortunate thing is that whenever we talk about Kukurahundi, it's a Matabeleland problem. You even hear it from the activists, all the activists that you have in Zimbabwe. They only talk about Kukurahundi when they come to campaign in Matabeleland. You never hear them when they are in Harare talking about Kukurahundi and calling for a solution of that problem. But they use it as a political tool. And for how long shall that go on? If those questions cannot be answered, my little son Chikovhi, I regret to say this matter is not about to be resolved. And it is a pity that the youngsters are going to face it. And that's very unfortunate. But that's the way it is. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Ndlovu, thanks very much for that. I think we are only left with 8 minutes. I was hoping that we were going to discuss Kukurahundi, but unfortunately at 6 o'clock, I've got another engagement. So what I would ask is that you share this time very, very wisely. At least 2 minutes each. I will come to Ubabu Maponga. 2 minutes to make your closing remarks, Bob.
Thank you. I will not even take 2 minutes. I'll be half a minute. I wish out of this conversation, we can start off by pulling off the high level that we have spoken about into some document of some sort. By teaching me, Babu Mkabadela and Ndlovu, you are teaching the whole country. So I don't consider this to be a waste of time. And I think that maybe we can develop a paper out of this, which I will freely and honestly share on all my platforms, and we all contribute. And until we write our own narrative, we'll constantly be swallowing and sharing rumors and fabrications about the reality of our situation. I thank you.
Oh, thanks very much, Baba Maponga. Baba Sigabade, 2 minutes, Baba.
The story, Woyane, is that if lions don't live up to telling the story of their hunt, the story of the hunt will be told by who? Hunters. I am the lion. I am the one who is a victim and a survivor. My story needs to be told by me, not anyone else, not even by Maponga. I will tell my story. We are at that juncture now where we need to be able to, using the narrative of our stories, we should be able to focus into the future. I wish Uguti into this thing as live, as even live with Maponga, don't disappear. Let's have another one in the future where we will talk about Kukurahundi, the future of Zimbabwe, because as it stands right now, we have all agreed, and it is clear
Sigabade,
that Kukurahundi is not as
the offer that you have made to Ubabu Maponga, Baba Maponga, is it an offer that you are happy to accept? Thank you.
Thank you. Me and Maponga have a date. We have a date, Maponga. When I visit South Africa, I'll look for you. We need to sit down and talk.
I'm in Harare now.
No, don't worry. You will come to South Africa. Africa is Africa. You're a Pan-Africanist. We meet anyway.
Okay. Are you done?
Right.
Yes.
I am saying we have a debt with destiny. We have a debt with posterity. We have to engage this. And I like what Maponga said. We need to document these things that we're talking about. For posterity, we need to actually talk to posterity. We need to ensure that everything that we talk about today, we do not only document in terms of video, but also as we write, we need to write. By writing, we are telling the stories of our souls. The stories of our souls are very deep. Zimbabwe deserves better.
Okay.
Thank you so much, guys.
No, thanks very, very much. Mr. Chikovhi.
Yes, sir. For my final remarks, 2 minutes, right?
2 minutes.
Yeah, so for my final remarks, I'd like to say from my Pan-Africanist, from my very not so experienced Pan-Africanism, I didn't necessarily live to experience the Pan-Africanism I was expecting to experience. The Pan-Africanism whereby black on black constructivism happened. Instead of the only time whereby we're constructive is when like we engage with white people. When we're engaging with the Americans, we no longer bring up that, oh, you guys committed such and such atrocities here. We still haven't dealt with that. But we're willing to overlook such atrocities and jump into, let's all sing kumbaya, come and invest in our country. And we should reject even their investment. Yeah, I guess that would be a manifestation of like the Pan-Africanism that we hope to see. Because at this moment and from this conversation, all I got was that no, you're wrong, you're right, no, you never be right, of which all of that didn't necessarily constructively build towards us ending up what do you call giving someone who's going to watch this something that's going to help them find a narrative that's towards a future of a Zimbabwe that looks towards unity and togetherness and the Pan-Africanism that we seem to be able to exercise with whites, but unable to exercise together. I am a ZANU-PF youth. Actually, I'm very much involved in ZANU-PF, like district level. I'm Secretary for Information and Publicity. And the ZANU-PF that I've grown to like what do you call experience is one that taught me that no, overlook the past or like use the past as a way to charge into the future.
It's over
and
2 minutes there.
The future of a united Zimbabwe, a peaceful Zimbabwe, a developed Zimbabwe. I'm sorry for taking time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Ndlovu, now you have a minute.
Kanjani? Uyangikhuthuza wena. Hayi, angibonge bafowethu ubaba uMhlangu uSigabade siyabonga. Baba uShikovhi siyabonga. Baba Maponga Themba asixabananga mina nawe. Right, the long and the short ngizobuyela ubaba uShikovhi. If you noticed, ngeke ngazama ukukhuluma isiShona lapha. IsiShona sami asisihle sona. Kodwa into ebengizama ukuyenza yinto eyehlulayo eZimbabwe. The thing I was trying to do was to demonstrate that something failed. Because you still have umuntu ohlala eZimbabwe ozothi eliphoyisa mhlambe kobulawayo or ewanki or kuphi athi maye seyasunga akatumi kwakunze shiyenda kunosunga so and so kana chiswika ipapo then the person says andizvi ndebele. You get that very often, and when you talk about nation building, that cannot really be the formula. I'm glad you said you are a member of ZANU-PF, which is the organization that's currently running Zimbabwe. And as a young person, may you please take this method and tell the people in ZANU-PF that the people are talking. How can we have one section of Zimbabwe trying to colonize the other sections of Zimbabwe? Because to be frank with you, people in other parts of Zimbabwe, Mr. Chikovhi, feel colonized, especially by this deployment of people personnel into those areas the personnel who refuse outright to speak local language and they insist on speaking Shona. So if we can all maybe in our little corners try and embrace other people's languages. I don't have to be perfect in Shona to have a conversation, but I can have a conversation. The same should be applied to everyone among us. If we all went that route, I think this Zimbabwe that people dreamt about would be possible. But with arrogance, everything will crumble in tatters. Thank you.
Okay, no, thanks very much, Dr. Ndlovu. Thanks very much to our panel, Mr. Chikovhi, Professor Sigabade, Ubaba Maponga, Naguwe Baba Ndlovu. We hope that these conversations will lead us to a better future where we can start to listen to each other, not to make unfounded assumptions about each other. We are a people. In order for us to go forward, in order for us to coexist, we need to listen to each other. We are all human beings. If we want to tell the other person how to feel, how to think, how to live, that will not work. And that is exactly what has failed our country right now. So I'm hoping that this conversation will be a beginning of other constructive conversations that will ensue. So otherwise, thanks very much. Let's meet again at another time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Wayane. Thank you.